going on in breaking news around the nation, that's across the nation, but you're hearing it first right here at the Meade Messenger Studios. We're so glad you could join us today in studio. I've got Mark Burnett, who is joining me here today with another special guest as well, and that is Mr. Tom Ballinger. But before we introduce Tom Ballinger, Mark, tell everybody you said hello.
Hello, everyone. So we're going to go over some primary election talk today. We're going to have Mr. Ballinger here with us to discuss his campaign for fifth district Senate seat in Kentucky. He is challenging the incumbent Steve Meredith. And welcome to the studio.
I'm glad to be here.
But before we get started, I've got to go into some breaking news for you. There is a big fire, and all of our sheriffs and law enforcement are out there addressing it. So if you're seeing the smoke coming in, please be careful, pay attention to your driving area, and make sure that you observe everybody else's driving habits so they don't create an accident trying to shop and look for where the fire is. Everybody, be safe out there. But
do we have a location on the fire?
I am working on that diligently. You'd think that as the news provider that's the news across the nation, we would already have that information, but we're working on it.
All right.
Back to you, Mark.
All right. So thank you, Steve. That was a lot going on in that intro. Well, welcome to the studio, Mr. Ballinger.
I'm glad to be here. That's y'all have come a long way with the studio, and y'all
Thank you.
provide
Steve works hard at it, and I think it's a work in progress, but it's a lot of joy and a lot of.
It is.
I mean, I know Steve has been really working really hard on this part of the messenger and
the website
and I mean a lot of stuff going on, and so a lot of props to Steve and the team here at the messenger for how they're turning this around and offering us some different technology and different media outlets for the Meade County area, but.
It enables you to get the information out a lot quicker.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it also gets us the opportunity to get community activities together. You got to go to this website, or you got to go to this Facebook, or this Facebook. But if you don't know that it exists, it's hard to find.
You got to search.
Exactly.
You could do search for Meade County, and then you got all these pop-ups, and I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that existed. But then you got to, it's a group. I got to get accepted.
Yeah.
Or this or that. But the newspaper, in my opinion, has always been the link pin to the community, whether it's the churches, the 501c3s, the organizations, the support organizations that actually uplift your community so that you don't have to be dependent upon government. Right.
I mean, that was a conversation that we had. I don't want to steal all your time, but this is an interesting topic. When we, you and I had this conversation a while back, where Steve and I, where it's it's hard to find out where things are. And I think you just said it, you do a search and it's like, you don't know what you're going to get when you do a search. Half the time you're going to get Meade County, but you have to specifically say Meade County, Kentucky, because Sturgis is in Meade County. Was it South Dakota?
Yes.
South Dakota.
Yeah.
It sure is.
And it's
and so you have a Meade County, Colorado too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
I Googled it. It pulled up.
It's right. And it's like, so
that's because they don't have their SEO monetization set up correctly within the county. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well,
I know I just confused everybody out there, but this is the tech I'm bringing. I'm just saying.
But the fact that
hopefully I'll be the first
together,
thing you search when you look for Meade County.
But having Meade County, the Meade County Messenger, pulling these things in and being a portal to Meade County, not just government, but to all of Meade County,
yes, sir,
is a great thing.
Thank you.
And one thing that I've learned during this campaign is if I'm looking for an event that somebody's told me about, a lot of times you can go to the digital newspaper, and they've already advertised it. Yep. So, I mean, it brings the people to it because they'll have their address, they'll have what's going on, they'll have a time.
That's right.
And it saves so much. It's so effortless.
That's right.
To get it.
I think that as we do that, people will start learning that is a great landing spot for them, but it's going to take some time. Speaking of getting to learn some people, Tom, you're in here, you're running the race. You've been handing out, how many business cards did you hand out, you said yesterday?
I checked it a while ago when I was eating lunch. I've handed out a little over 11,000 cards.
Wow. So you're gripping and grinning. How do you feel the race is going for you right now?
I hope I'm even up.
Okay, yeah.
all I can say is I don't pay attention to the numbers.
Sure.
I'm going to go till the last day.
Yeah.
And then when it comes in,
Yeah.
if I win, fine. If I don't, I'll shake his hand, tell him good job.
Yeah.
It's
Well, you're
just a race.
you're a principled man. I mean, you're standing on your principles and you're fighting for what you believe.
Yeah.
And it takes courage to do that. So in this race, what is your platform?
My platform, number one, is pro-life.
Okay.
The abortion life is very dear to me.
Sure.
And a infant or a little one needs a chance in life.
That's right.
You know, nobody needs to cut that short. Second Amendment, leave my guns alone, point blank.
Yep.
I don't want you to restrict it. I don't want you to even find a way that I've got it.
Yeah.
You know, there was a bill about banking, keeping up with the guns. No, don't want it. Don't want it any way.
Yeah.
That's my Second Amendment right. They're mine. School choice. School choice is a big issue right now. It, in one opinion, you can look at 4 or 5 different ways. The way I look at it is with the school systems, public school systems, not having any competition, now they'll have to step their game up to where they're not happy.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're hoping for.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, not happy being just proficient.
Yeah.
You know, they have to step it up so they can keep their money.
That's right.
Because you've got a lot of teachers, and this has been for years, because my girls are grown, and I seen it 20 years ago, that, you know, some teachers just they're not motivated. So when the school boards start saying, okay, we're losing money because our English is low or our math is low, you know, then they're going to start stepping their game up.
Yeah.
Competition breeds excellence.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest problems that we have is the teachers unions have become so powerful. I mean, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I mean, somebody out there might say that I'm thinking. I don't think the teachers should have unions. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that the union has to be a balance in that power where, you know, the school systems have to be able to hold the teachers accountable to teaching children the curriculum. But, you know, then you look at the curriculum these days has become, you know, so far left and not really teaching those skills that we really need our kids to have.
Basic life skills.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I expect.
You know,
from my school, from my public school system.
Yeah, but I also feel like the teachers' hands are tied in a lot of situations where there are kids that are not getting the parenting they need, and the teachers are not their parents. But you know, back when we grew up, you didn't turn in an assignment. You went outside, you got your butt whooped. You know what I mean?
Messed up at home,
yeah,
at
you
the school,
knew there was a consequence, but they don't have that power. So, in one hand, they have a power by being a union to protect them because they don't have power. But they're using their power in a different way to protect the job. So it's really so confusing. But to the point, it's somewhere in there, parents need to parent.
Yes.
But I'm parenting my child to go to a private school, and my tax dollars are not helping my child.
I was at a school yesterday in Breckenridge County. They did a shop safety. It basically was a farm field day. And I did beekeeping and shop safety. And you could definitely tell the students that come through that were well disciplined because you could listen to the answers.
Yeah.
You could listen to the questions, and you could tell the kids that had good parenting, and then you had some kids that were just like spider monkeys.
Yeah.
And the teacher, it takes so much of that teacher's time to control the one or two that they cannot give their another 18 or 19 kids the attention they need.
That's right. I mean, that's why we talked about with Miss Tate, with Nancy Tate.
Representative.
Was that yesterday?
Representative.
I was like, man, these days are going and going and going. So that was on yesterday's podcast, but we talked about the fact that, or we brought up the fact that it's, you know, that student to teacher ratio is an important number to make sure that you don't have, so that it's less likely that a teacher will have multiple problem students in a classroom. So if it's, you know, 15-1 or versus 25-1, that's a big leap.
Yes.
When you're trying to reach young minds, and in many cases they're young, undisciplined minds.
Yes.
There's not enough teachers, so that ratio goes up even higher. Because they have to split teacher classrooms.
Yeah.
Through the KSBA, I do a lot of schools. I hit a lot of schools. and I stepped back from that. But even during this campaign, I'm still hitting schools, and I've noticed I did 17 or 18 schools where you read across America.
Right.
And you would notice some of the smaller classroom ratios would be your special needs or kids that needed a little bit more social attention.
Right.
And the bigger classrooms were the ones that didn't need the social attention and everything. So some of these school districts have it figured out, but there was one school that there was 31 kids in that class, and she had an aide, but that's a lot of kids to take care of.
Yeah, and an aide is not necessarily, a lot of times the aides they're not necessarily educated in you know, in teaching. There are a lot of times they're just parents or somebody that's I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my mom was a volunteer aide in our class, in my classroom, back in, you know, I was probably 70, that was probably in 1976 or something like that, 77, to kind of show my age a little bit, but it's a, you know, it's, but I remember that, her being there, and nowadays, I know they have a lot of paid aides and things like that, but they're, again, they're usually just, you know, people from the community who are interested in education. They have some education background, but they're not necessarily educated.
Volunteers.
Yeah, they're still, it's like a paid volunteer.
Yes.
And it's like, and even those positions are not easy to fill.
No.
Because, you know, you're asking people the people who care don't always have the time to go into that classroom every day.
And what you also look at too is the legal liability.
Right.
For a volunteer.
That's right.
And that goes back to, you know, still while we're still on teaching, one thing that I'm going to address thoroughly if I get elected or when I get elected is the teacher retirement. Right now, their teacher retirement program is about as broke as you can get. For every dollar that they put in, we're putting in like $2.61, 62 cents. So, you know, the system is broke and it needs to be, you know, addressed. And there's several ways that can be addressed. It's just that's one of the things that I'm going to look at when I get elected. Sportsmen's rights. That's a big thing for me. I enjoy hunting. I enjoy fishing. There's a lot of kids in my community that I take hunting and fishing, and we're slowly, as sportsmen, our voice is slowly not being heard. With 217, 241, now with Senate Bill 3. The Senate passed Senate Bill 3, and there was, at every committee, the room was full of sportsmen speaking out about it. And this is presidents, League in Kentucky, sportsmen, SCI Kentucky, all of them speaking out against it. And the Senate still passed it. Now, my hat's off to Steve. He voted no for it. You know, I'll give kudos where kudos are due. He voted no for it. It is a bad bill.
What can you kind of go into that a little bit? What is that bill about? What is that?
Senate Bill 3 is putting the game and fish underneath the Department of Agriculture.
Oh.
If you look at the Department of Agriculture mission statement and the Department of Game and Fish's mission statement, it's like fire and water. The reason why they're doing that is they're saying they need admin, their admin staff. Well, the Senate put Game and Fish as a standalone agency. So it's right at 2 years now, and they're having a hard time acquisition vehicles and equipment and stuff like that. If you're a separate entity as a COO or a CEO, you need to learn how to do that. Putting it in Game and Fish is not the right idea, because Game and Fish, or putting it in the Department of Agriculture, is not the right idea, because the Department of Agriculture has got their hands full with the fair and all the agriculture organizations and all the issues that we have. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, that feel like it may hurt the Department of Agriculture hard. And I would hate to see, because I like
putting an extra burden on those offices.
A big burden on them. And I like Mr. Shell a lot, and I'm afraid that the drama from the Game and Fish will fall into the Department of Agriculture, and I just don't think it's fair to put it there.
Is this a? I'm trying to understand exactly what Senate Bill 3, the reason behind it. If they're having trouble with admin, it seems that we would you know, you would have to look at how the structure is more than just who's where it falls under the
When
right
they-
now.
when they were under-
is that an executive branch?
When they were under tourism,
Uh-huh.
that would help them. But in the last 4 to 5 years, the Senate has tried to move game and fish all by themselves as a separate entity. They don't fall under tourism. They were eliminating from the governor's control is what it was. So
Yeah, I'd heard that.
and it doesn't really make sense to me. They say, well, the governor tries to take some of the game and fish money. There's laws that are against that. He can't touch it. If he takes some money, you just go to court. He gets his hands slapped.
But you have to go to court.
Exactly.
And that makes
so they're making a separate entity, but the game and fish was having a hard time establishing itself as a separate entity.
I mean, it seems to me that you would want to be a separate entity, like you said, to control
totally
your
agree.
finances, to control your own finances, to control your admin and things like that. Right now, I mean, I think that most of the money is the Fish and Wildlife really don't take money from they don't really take money from the general fund for the most part. They have to raise their own money.
They are a total self entity. The only time that they've taken money was like 241 last year. And this was a conflict that you see. 217 and set them. You're a separate entity.
Right.
You're all by yourself. And then 241 comes along. Okay, we're going to give you $3.8 million out of the general fund, not out of your account, out of the general fund. And by the way, you've got if less than 5 acres, you've got to buy a fishing license. There were several things in that bill that made no sense, because 3 to 4 years they're making it a separate entity to get it away, all standalone. And then the last thing they do is, okay, we're going to give you $3.8 million. They've got money. It doesn't make sense. And the sportsman spoke out about it.
But why did they? I mean, it doesn't seem. I mean, I'm a little confused because I'm trying to understand why. And this is news to me, right? As far as I know, you and I have talked about this a little bit. As far as some of the things going into the bill that didn't make sense, like the licenses on less than 5 acres and for fishing licenses and such. But the fact that they're trying to give money to this entity, to Fish and Wildlife, and they didn't even ask for it.
They did ask for it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
This would be
So
like a government
Okay.
doesn't want to use soldiers to do something anymore, so they want to hire a contractor to come and run that area, right? Well, the government still got to fund that contract.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's my take on it. Tom, you can smack a mole if I'm off a little bit, but it gets expensive. It seems like you pay more for a contractor than, of course, you would for that soldier to go and do the work. But with the downsizing force or a limited capacity, I could see where you would need this. But I would also want it to be you created an entity. From my understanding,
They created it.
You created an entity, and then you come back and you say we're going to help fund the entity. But who's regulating the entity?
Zero.
Right. Okay. So that would be my concern, right? So
Right.
we funded it, but I would assume that it has to be audited. We're spending money, so it's not out of a slush fund.
Yeah, I mean every
would think-
entity is up for an audit. I don't think that's the issue. But the issue is who's running the entity, who's in charge of spending
right.
those
Or
dollars.
is that person competent enough
Yeah.
to run that entity?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I see what you're saying too, Tom. I mean, from a perspective of if you're going to create this entity and then you're going to fund this entity, then at least write in some regulation for the entity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And instead of
that makes
stair-stepping
perfect
it.
sense.
There
That
was
makes
so
perfect
much and sportsmen spoke out against it, but for some reason the Senate is not listening to the sportsmen.
Yeah, I know that we had this conversation with Nancy yesterday, with Representative Tate yesterday. That
Yes.
it's and forgive me if I keep calling her Nancy. It's just saying Representative Tate.
You've
is
known her for a long time.
Yeah, I've known her for a long time, and so and that we that sometimes that those that when you have those bills that what was I saying about that? We were talking about whether the entity was. Let me get my mind back
Yeah,
there.
you're talking about the LRC when the Legislative Review Committee.
I wasn't going into that, but it was about whether or not the legislation, it if they're setting regulations or letting legislation, let the entities develop the rules around the legislation and things
And
like
see,
that.
that's the thing. Game and Fish has a 9-man committee.
Uh-huh.
And that because you can watch their quarterly meeting. It's on YouTube. It's live. You can watch that. And at no time did any of that get discussed. And so you call them up and say, hey, every one of them on 241 said, we didn't know it was coming. We know nothing about it. So, I mean, there's factors working outside the sportsman's voice. Those 9-man members are elected in groups of 5, say our district. 5 people are elected by sportsmen.
Right.
Those 5 names go to the governor. The governor picks one. That goes to the Senate for confirmation.
Right.
Senate Bill 64. And not only is the Senate not listening to the sportsmen during committee meetings, when it comes to confirmation, a lot of times they won't even confirm. And when you talk about the bills, and I understand when they come back, sometimes the bill will be misprinted or the language barrier was a little bit off.
That's not where I was going. But I mean, I just remember my thought, so I apologize if I threw a little confusion in there. But what I was going to say is sometimes leadership, the leadership in the Senate or the leadership in the House, they want something so bad that it's almost like it's pressed into wherever they can press it into,
and it makes
for
you
whatever
worry.
reason. I don't understand why it is.
Why they want that so bad?
Yeah,
It's
a good question.
217 was forced down. 241 was forced down. Now Senate Bill 3 is being forced down. Why does the Senate want?
It's a good question.
And you ask the question, and they'll walk away.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
you definitely raised a good question for the listeners on that today. On your platform, you talked about pro-life. You talked about
guns.
money following the students. You're definitely talking about these bills of concerns and representing the 5th District. So,
Yes.
what are some of the other things that you're hoping to? Let's say you get elected. Right?
Okay.
What is your launch platform? What are you launching into as
What's
your
that first session
Yeah.
for you?
For me, one of the first bills I'll do, and I know it'll go over like a turd in a punch bowl, but you've got to do term limits. The sitting there for 10, 12, 14 years, you get so out of touch. Look at these senators are sitting there now. They're in a long session. They started January 1st.
Okay.
And they won't be back in their district at all until April 15th. And then they've got committee meetings once or twice a week. And I've talked to a bunch of people in the last 2 months. And most of them, even in dedicated areas, say, I've never met him.
So what would before I ask my next question, what do you think term limit, how many term limits should you have? And I have a reason why I'm asking this question, because I've learned a lot about our legislature in the last 3 years, and it takes a minute, but go ahead. How 2 terms? 2, okay.
So for Senate or
For Senate.
Okay.
And House.
And so the only reason why I say this
is only
is
4 years for the House.
4 terms for House.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
4 terms.
4 terms for
Yeah.
House.
So okay, that's
8 years
It's
apiece.
8 years.
yeah, I got
It's
it.
8
And
years,
then 2 terms for senator would be how many years?
8 years.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I could see that maybe. Yeah, I guess I could.
Yeah, I'm not.
I just know.
I, for one, am not a proponent.
Yeah, Mark and I have had this battle.
We've had this battle a long time.
And I've kind of
I'm
come.
not a proponent for term limits at the legislative level.
And the only reason
I'll tell you why.
And
I don't think we want to get into that.
no,
today.
but
pour it on me. I like it.
we actually kind of came to an agreement on this after watching this year, specifically this year, because we have a long legislative session.
Yes.
And we have a long legislative session because they had to do the budget,
Yes.
which they ate up almost all of their legislative time arguing over. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they've only had. Last night we
Yes.
found out they only have 23 bills completed.
Yeah.
with
Out of
8 days left.
1,200.
Out of 1,223,
yeah.
1,223. So, and then they've got 8 days left.
But how that
8
hurts,
legislative days.
how that really hurts is those 1,200 and say 1,240 or 1,230 bills that have been shelved for 30 days now are going to be force fed brought up and forced
But
through.
that goes right back to, I think, where, because then they carry it and then you fix it the next year, or then you fix it the next year. And so sometimes it seems like that's what happens, but you got to almost stick around long enough to see it through.
But you're running into a fixing cycle.
Well,
like the 241.
Then vote. Then vote to extend that, which is coming up. It's coming out.
Don't say it like that. That's not what that bill says.
That's not what that bill says.
Don't say it like that. I know where you're going to go, and you're going to.
I'm not going to screw this up. I'm not going to screw this up. I'll let Mark correct me. Listen, if they present a new vote to change the Kentucky Constitution, which goes out to every voter in the state. They tried to do this before so that they could, we're in a stuck mode, right? So we could pause and then come back and reactivate ourselves to finish up the legislation, right? But nobody wanted that. So now they're going to present a new bill. And if the bill is passed, then it'll go to vote in the general election, I think it is, and then we vote to change the Constitution. I'm for a longer legislative session personally, and stop kicking it down the road and fund the legislation to get the job done right the first time. But so you don't have to kick this can and do the Band-Aid bungee wire and all that other stuff.
Right. And I've been asked that question, and I said, okay, instead of extending your 60-day session and then having a 30, do 260s.
I mean, that's a. I mean, I'm not against that at all. I mean, I think that we're living in an antiquated timetable for our legislation, for our legislators. We're putting them
in a box
because we say, oh, this is part time. Well, we don't. I don't know that we have that they really live in a part time world.
No.
To be able, and I'm not pushing for full time, and I'm not pushing for them to get paid a ton more money. But the thing is that if they could stop, as we said, right, if they could get to a pause in the legislative year, because the law right now says they have to be finished by April 15th.
Yes.
Right, and they can't call themselves back, right, to do any more work. So if you just said, hey, they have 60, let's say it still says 60 days, but you have 60 days throughout the year to pick 60 days to work allows committees. See, committees still meet, right?
Yes.
So committees still meet to work on legislation. And
making sausage. That's what we call that. They can't come
to session to vote. Yeah. So if we allowed them to spread it out throughout the year, then we would allow them to work as committee. Bring bills together, actually work on the bills and give them time to do that in committee. Then when it comes out of committee, we go into, let's say we have a 10-day session in July, right? Where they can now come and we would be able to spread that out, allow real work to happen instead of trying to shoehorn everything into, I
agree with that. And how that would work better is now the public would be able to see and research what they're passing. Right now, by holding a lot of these bills, that's like one bill the other day, it's been sitting in Senate or the House committee since the 6th of last month. It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
But until it's read in a committee, it doesn't get a lot of public awareness. So by getting these bills public awareness is the biggest thing. But it also falls back on the senator too. Read your bills. Do the due diligence.
I don't disagree, but I think that we're putting them. But I do think we're putting them up against a hard place to read all 1,223 bills, because you're not just talking about your bills. You're talking about the person that, maybe you're co-sponsoring, or maybe you're just, what's the other word? There's sponsor.
Or you got sponsor, co-sponsor, and then
there's like junior sponsors or something, right? Yeah. I don't know what's called. I can't remember the actual name. But they have other people who are saying, "Hey, we're putting our name on this to support it." But a lot of times, those people aren't even coming back and rereading the language and stuff because they're up against a lot of times it's up against the wall,
and they are,
or they trust the people that are doing it. There's a whole lot of that goes into it.
But us as taxpayers are paying them to pass legislation. That means for them to know what the legislation is, they need to read it.
Oh,
not just vote on it.
I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, you and I are on the same page on that. I want them to have the time to read it, but I think that it starts with giving them the time to read it.
I agree, and I think the 260 instead of a 30 and a 60 would open up. But passing a bad bill and then turning around the next year and fixing
It's
it,
a waste of time.
it's a waste of taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
Because each day is roughly $150,000, $200,000 is what it costs a taxpayer.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. As having 260s, I do want people to support the. I do want people to support the amendment to allow the legislature to spread out those days. I think that would be helpful as well. And maybe you don't need 260s. Maybe you need 245s, or we find a number that makes sense that you can do, because now you're. I think that it's time for us to at least look at finding some real change in the way that we do our legislature.
When the days were set up, we didn't have as much commerce, didn't have as much business,
yeah.
And we've grown as a state of Kentucky.
That's
we've
right.
grown, so the legislature has to grow too, and I totally understand that. But you don't want to go where their legislators there 4 months out of the year.
No. I mean, we want them to be. We want them to be
in your
home.
areas.
But I think that if we spread it out, that allows them the time to go home.
It does.
And
what you also have to look at
and answer
is
questions.
When these legislators aren't in session, you've got some that's on 5-6 committees. So true. They're up there 3 and 4 days a week.
How many senators are there? How many?
36, 38.
Yeah, it's
and there's 100 representatives.
Yeah, so 100. It's 100 representatives.
So you're looking at some of these senators that are in the Senate leadership or in the good graces of the leadership that are sitting on 5, 6, 7 committees.
Right.
They're not home. They may be home 1-2 days a week. They're doing committees all the time.
Yeah, I know on the House side, I know more about the House side because we talk with Miss Nancy Tate quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of they can be on a lot of committees too, but there's a lot more people to
fill across. Yes,
yeah. And so they're on some joint. There's some joint committees and things like between the House and Senate. I think she says she's on the. I think the what was it she called that
she's on the National Women's.
No, it's the one that approves.
Oh, the
expenditures.
Budget. The expenditures for the budget.
Capital expenditures.
Capital expenditures. She's on the front end, and Mr. Meredith is on the back end.
Right, and so she was. But that's a joint. I think that's also a joint committee.
Both
I think
them.
both of those are joint committees.
Yes.
So that they don't have to double up and.
Well, it would probably be a conflict of interest if they was on both.
I'm just saying that I'm talking about House and Senates. I mean, House and Senates would be a mixture of because there's a mixture of House and Senate on both of those committees.
Joint committees.
Yeah, those are joint committees that are. I think that makes sense to have them both there instead of having individual committees on each side because.
But
now you're all.
That is one of the good committees. They regulate a lot. They do. But some of the committees that they want to do research committees and this and that. If you form a committee, we'll give you, for instance, the Certificate of Need Committee. They met all summer. Come back. We need more time to figure it out. Okay. If you need more time than 6 months, you're some of 7 or 8 of the smartest people in Kentucky. You need more time to figure it out. Apparently, you're not going to figure it out. So scrap it, redo it, or modify it. And a bill went through this morning that was wanting to modify some of it, and all of them voted it down. And 3 of the people on that board actually said, I have healthcare organizations. By adopting this to reorganize or redo part of the certificate will hurt my business, so I vote no. They actually said it in the committee. It is like having the fox protecting the hen house.
So what I hear you saying is you're going in there like a tornado in a trailer park.
Yep. I'm the bull in the china shop.
That's all right.
And I don't care what I knock off the shelf.
Well, I'm glad.
I will vote and I will carry anything that will benefit the 5th district.
There you go.
But some of the stuff that just pours money out. When you write a bill, and it's no information in it, or no documentation, or no explanation of how you're going to do it, that's like passing a bill like with an open check. We don't have an open check. We don't have an open checkbook. So if you write something up, detail it how you want
Sure.
to do it. That's just,
Yeah.
Well, so we're coming to the end. I've got a couple of announcements to make, but one final thought from you as to the listeners before you get off the show today.
all I ask is please come out and vote May 21st. I'm sorry.
May 21st.
May 21st. My website's voteballinger.com. My website's Thomas Ballinger for State Senate, and I would appreciate your vote.
Final thoughts from you, Mark.
Well, I agree. We want as many people to come out and vote
Yes.
In this primary. It's important to get out and make your voice heard. Even I know that Donald Trump has already won the Republican nomination, but it's important to come out and show the support for your Republican nominees, with whoever side you're on. But make sure you come out and vote. It's one of the most important things that we can do as a body of people, as a Republican or a Republican
Democrat.
or a Democrat.
Vote. Everybody vote. So listen, I'm going to take it back here. I've got a couple of announcements. Hey, I'm starting to learn how to wear rhino liner because I screwed up this ad. It went out by the paper. The fair dates are July the 20th through the 27th. We are advertising. We have about 22 pages of advertising space available. So if you want advertising space, you need to get in touch with us ASAP. The number is 270-422-2155. Select the sales department. You'll be in touch with our amazing Hannah Hayes, and Hannah will get you taken care of so that you can get your article or your business featured in the fair catalog. We are going to be the publisher for the fair catalog. There's not going to be 2 fair catalogs. That was put out on a previous show, and I ask you to dig in and get your business annotated in there as quickly as possible. It is filling up fast, and we are already in production for the fair catalog. It's happening quicker than you think, folks. July is right around the corner as we also look at our special sections for graduation. Those are already out too. So get in touch with us. We'll get your advertising needs met and definitely be part of those holistic, wholesome parts of the paper that people really like to read. With that, I just want to say have a wonderful evening, and I'm so glad you joined us. Thanks for joining us at the Messenger Studio.